So here's my interpretation on the ukulele of the guitar riff of the song. What you see is not a music notation, it's actually a tablature notation. It's another notation or method for writing or reading music. The 4 lines that you see are the strings actually. They represent the strings of the ukulele. The bottom line represents the 4th string, and the top line represents the 1st string. And the first number that you see, which is 5, is on the string that represents the 2nd string. And the number tells you at which fret you have to play that string. You see 5, so that means it's at 5th fret. This is 1st fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 4th fret, 5th fret. And so at 5th fret, you press the 2nd string. By the way, if you are not familiar with the parts of the ukulele, click this card for that lesson. The first symbol that you see on the tablature is actually a symbol for half rest. That means at beat number 1, it's silence up to beat number 2. And the number 5 is actually at beat number 3. So the first note that you play for this riff is actually at 3rd beat of the 1st measure. The riff actually covers 5 measures. And the numbers, the red numbers that you see at the bottom are actually counters. These indicate the tempo of the song, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But you see letter ends in between those numbers because there are notes that are played 8 note. So instead of counting 1, 2, 3, 4, you have to do 8 note counting. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Now let's begin with the first note. So it's on a string that represents the 2nd string here. And you see a symbol, it's actually an arrow up, and you see the word full. And then it shows you next an arrow down. This is actually a left hand technique that is popular on playing electric lead guitar. This technique is actually what we call bend. So at 5th fret on the 2nd string, you bend the string. It's a full bend, meaning if this is the sound on the 2nd string at 5th fret, instead of making another tone that is a full step higher, which is the one at 7th fret, you don't do it that way. But instead, right at the lower fret, which is 5th fret, you bend the string high and raise it or bend it higher until it gets this pitch. Because on the string, the moment you bend the string, you raise the pitch of that string. And how much we have to raise it? By a full step. And that would mean 2 frets up, which is at 7th fret. So this is our desired pitch when we bend the 5th string, or when we bend the 2nd string at 5th fret. There, right? That pitch is the same as this. So you have to bend the 2nd string at 5th fret and bass it high enough so you get to that pitch. It may be hard, actually it's hard to bend a string, especially a shorter string like the ukulele. So all you need to do, or all you have to do, is use 2 fingers to bend it, which is what you see here. I'm using my middle finger on the same string, but I'm using my ring finger to bend the string along with my middle finger. So my middle finger is actually helping my ring finger in bending the string. So 2 fingers is better than 1. Because if you bend with just 1 finger, the string might slip, right? So to prevent that, you need 2 fingers to keep that string as you bend it, which I can do. So that's what full bend mean. And you see arrow going up, so that means it gets to the desired pitch, and then you see an arrow that goes down, So that means while it's ringing, you have to bend it down or bring it back, which is what we call a release. So this technique is actually what we call a bend release. So we bend and then release. So you hear the sound of the pitch going down. You hear the sound goes up as you bend it, or the pitch goes up as you bend it, and the pitch goes back as you release it or you bend it down. Not really bending down, but releasing the string back to its original position. So you begin the bending right at count number 3. So 1, 2, 3, right? And then when you get to count number 4, that's when you pick the same string at 3rd fret, and that's the next number that you see, which is 3. The next number that you see is 3. So that's the next one that you have to play. So after bending the string at 5th fret, at count 4, you position your index finger at 3rd fret on the same string at count and play it at count 4. So it goes like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then the next number, or the third number that you see, is a 5, and it's at the end after count 4. So if we have to do 8-note counting, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and at that end after count 4, that's when you play the same string at 5th fret. So in the first measure, this is what happens: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that's for the first measure. And then in the second measure, the first number that you see there is also a 5 on the same string. So that means you still have your finger on the second string at 5th fret, but you don't have to pick it another time at count 1. As you can see, that number is right at count 1. But again, you don't have to pick it again. As you can see, the last note in the first measure is tied to the first note in the second measure. You see a curve. That's actually a tie. That means when you play the second string at 5th fret at N after count 4, you will have to keep it ringing up to the first and second beats of the second measure. So that rings another 2 beats in the second measure. So here's how it goes. Back to the first measure: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and there. So you'll have to hold that note for the next 2 beats in the second measure. And then on the third beat of the second measure, you see a 5 again on the same string, and you also see the same method of playing it, which is bending. You see the word full, and you see the arrow up and the arrow down. So you just repeat what you did in the first measure here in the second measure. So back in the first measure, it goes like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and there, right? So you have 2 bending, one in the first measure and another in the second measure. And to continue in the second measure, at beat number 4, you see number 3 is still on the same string. So that means after bending the same string at third beat, when you get to count number 4, play the string at 3rd fret, right at count 4. So to repeat that sequence, 3 and 4, which is exactly the same as what we did in the first measure. But the note that follows this is a 4 on another string, which is actually the 3rd string. And the 4 there tells you to play that string at 4th fret. And when? It should be at N after count 4. So this is another 8th note. So from the bending sequence up to this note, it goes like this: 3 and 4 N. So I played this string at 4th fret at N after count 4. So from the first measure, it goes like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 there, right? Now that's for the first 2 measures. Continuing to the 3rd measure, you see the same string, which is 3rd string, with the number 4. And again, it is tied with the previous note. So the last note, or the last string to be played in the 2nd measure, is tied to the first note in the 3rd measure, which is the string played at 4th fret. And you'll have to, like what you did in the 1st and 2nd measures, where the 2nd string played at 5th fret is tied to the next measure. You have here in the 2nd measure, the last note, which is on the 3rd string at 4th fret, is tied in the 1st measure of the 3rd string, which is also on the 4th fret. And you'll have to keep it ringing for the first 2 beats of the 3rd measure. So it goes like this from the beginning: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and so there. Now the next note in the 3rd measure is a 5 on the 2nd string, and it's also the same as what you have, or what we have, in the 1st and in the 2nd measure. So we bend the same string at 5th fret, full bend, and release. So back from the 1st measure, it goes like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and then the next note is still on the same string, 2nd string, but with the number 3. That means you'll have to pick the same string at 3rd fret at count 4. So back from the 1st measure, it goes like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and there. So this note is actually a quarter note. In the 4th measure, you see numbers on the same line, and that line is the 2nd string. So that means you're going to play all these notes on the same string. You see 5 at count 1, that means at 5th fret. You see the next number, you see 7, and that will be at count 2, and this is 7th fret. The next number is 8, and that means 8th fret, and that would be at count 3. And the next number is 10, that means 10th fret, at count 4. So it goes like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, right? So back in the 1st measure, it goes like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. But to complete the sequence in the 4th measure, you see number 12, and it is at N after count 4. So the note played at 10th fret is actually an 8th note, because at N after count 4 you have to play the sound of the string played at 12th fret. which is this one. This is 12th fret. But instead of picking the string at those frets individually, like once at count 10 and then again at count 12, you don't pick it twice. The symbol that you see, /, is actually another left-hand technique that is famous on playing electric lead guitar. The slide there tells you to slide, meaning as the string rings at 10th fret, you have to slide it while it's ringing, slide to 12th fret. So you only pick it once. As it's ring at 10th fret, you slide it to 12th fret, so it makes that sound, and the motion is sliding. And the timing, you have the counters for N. So at N, that's when you must have slide to 12th fret. So for N. So starting from the first measure, it goes like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 there. But to continue, in the 5th measure, you see a single number, which is 10 on the same string, and it's this one. And it must be played at count 1. And it must ring for 2 beats. Actually, you can actually leave it ringing as long as possible. So back in the 1st measure, for the whole thing, it goes like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3. There. So at a faster tempo, it goes like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3. And you can actually apply vibrato on the last note for an effect. So I've introduced to you 3 left-hand techniques, which are very famous, which are famous on playing lead guitar. The first one is bending, which is actually a bend and release, because there's also a bending technique which you don't release, but for this song, for this riff, it's a bend and release. And the second technique is what we call slide, which happens in the 4th measure, and is slide from 10th fret to 12th fret. And then the last technique that I'm introducing is in the last measure, 5th measure, at 10th fret, a vibrato. So you give that effect. Because if you just pick it without that effect, it rings like this. But with a vibrato effect, you get that kind of effect. And this riff you have to play 7 times. Twice for the intro, and after verse 1 going to 2nd verse, twice for the middle 8 or the interlude or the ad-lib part, which is also the same as doing the riff twice, and another 2 more times at the end of the song. For the performance video for the whole song, doing this riff, click this card for that performance video. I hope you find this tutorial helpful in learning to play the song on your instrument, and if it is, please don't forget to like. And if you have not subscribed yet to this channel, please do so that you'll be notified of the next upload. And also don't forget to share this lesson to your friends who might be interested also in learning to play this riff or the song. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to get notified for new upload. Please check out the end screens for more contents like this. Thank you for watching.